All right, can we bring Molly up so I can actually? There she is. How you doing, Molly? You're the senior editor of the Federalist. You are the best commentator now, bar none, on Fox News. You're like this little voice of sanity and reason that keeps popping up every now and again, something to cling to. It's you're really doing a terrific job. Um, I have been talking about these, what now seem to me to be two realities. There seem to be the reality of an administration that has had a tremendously successful first year, in spite of all the things I said about them, all the things everybody said about them. They really have achieved a lot. You know, the defeat of ISIS, the appointment of great judges, the tax cut, and all this. And you have an alternative reality of people talking about the fact that this guy is insane. You wrote a column today calling this essentially a coup attempt. Can you explain that?
Well, you have to kind of put it all in perspective, which is people really have been struggling to come to terms with the reality that Donald Trump won. And at first, it was all about how fake news had duped people into voting for someone that they wouldn't have voted for otherwise. And then we had that year of Russia hysteria, which I think everyone kind of realizes is coming to nothing. And then as soon as everyone kind of realized there was nothing to the Russia scare, now everybody in unison is going back to this thing that they actually have hit on throughout the year, which is Donald Trump needs to be removed through the 25th Amendment.
Yeah.
The 25th Amendment is something for people who are physically incapacitated but not dead. Or, they've been shot and they're in a coma, but they're not dead. Something like this. It was passed, in fact, after JFK was shot. And it's clearly not about someone who has behaved erratically for 40 years
Yes.
or more.
It's not erratic for him to behave erratically. Yeah.
And who everybody knew was the way he is when they voted for him. But that's how it's kind of being used now. And so there's this drumbeat like, oh, we have to get rid of him through the 25th Amendment. And it reminded me of this. There was that show 24 that was very popular, and they used the 25th Amendment. And they're mad at the president because he's not as interventionist as they'd like him to be. And so they oust him through the 25th Amendment. And I just think people should know what we're talking about, because it's obviously not that people really think that President Trump can't fulfill the duties of his office. They're just still struggling because they don't like him.
You know, there strikes me, though, as something, and I don't want to sound like Alex Jones. I mean, I was playing him before, and he's out of his mind at the media. But there does something strike me as something, I hate to use this word, but unpatriotic about this continually browbeating the president of the United States, who was duly elected. He is doing his job. There's nothing, the country's not falling apart. Nobody's being dragged out of his home for doing videos no reporters are having their phones tapped or anything like that. There's something wrong with going on every day as a newsman, as a theoretical journalist, and just attacking the guy constantly. Or am I overstating it?
I don't know. I mean, first off, I do think it's kind of funny that the conspiracy theorist in chief is now subjected to all these conspiracies. Like,
fair enough. That's fair enough.
Who went around for years claiming that he had evidence that Barack Obama wasn't born in the country. That's ludicrous, and it was wrong of him to do it. So it's kind of funny. On the other hand, if you don't like that he was doing stuff like that, you shouldn't be doing it yourself. And that's what so many people in the media are doing. And they therefore don't have a good means of speaking against him when they are no better than he was. And it is wrong to delegitimize a president just because you don't like him. And what's weird is, whereas on the right, you saw those delegitimization attempts kind of in the fever swamps, although one of them was elected president, admittedly. It's just so weird to see it among all these major media and establishment people who are just no better than he was and engaging in wild conspiracy theories.
One of the things that really startles me is when I get out of LA and when I go around and talk to people, people are amazingly nuanced in their views. People who support Trump say, yeah, I like him, but I wish he'd shut up on Twitter a little bit. People who hate him say, I hate him, but he's done some good things. And I don't like his attitude, but he's done some good things. That voice virtually doesn't exist, except for you. That voice virtually doesn't exist in the media. Is it just because it doesn't sell?
I actually don't understand this at all. I mean, it has been over a year since he was elected. There are a lot of people who are just not very well represented in the media. And I don't understand why you don't have more people representing that viewpoint, or just, people who aren't completely enraged one way or the other. Either, there's nothing wrong that he can do, or everything he does is worse than Hitler. It just seems like there's a lot of middle ground, and it would be nice to see people more in that space.
So, just talking about reality for a second, just to bring us back to reality, what are you looking to happen now? What are you looking forward to happening now in this administration? They had this great first year.
Oh.
They kind of put a cap on it with the tax cuts. Where do they go now? What is there left for them to do?
I think that usually when you have a presidency, they get a lot done in their first year and then it goes down from there.
Right.
But I think this presidency might be different because it was so chaotic. They really are a bunch of outsiders. Donald Trump was elected in almost like a revolution, but he didn't have an army to come along with him. So I have this weird idea that maybe you'll just see improvement after improvement. I mean, those first few months really were chaotic. I mean, it was pretty crazy, but they accomplished a lot. And now I think Congress has figured out how to work with them. Now, who knows what will happen in the midterms? So, maybe they'll try and get a bunch done before the impeachment happens. But I don't know. I mean, I could see it being this kind of presidency where each year it gets better and better through that final 8th year.
And do you think that there's any chance? I mean, there's some stuff on the table that you would think Democrats would be willing to compromise on. Infrastructure, certainly. They usually love infrastructure with its, it's union graft half the time. And even the DACA thing where he says, give me the wall and I'll give you DACA. I mean, isn't that politics as usual? Are they so far beyond that? Are their donors so dedicated to shutting down any kind of compromise that there's no way of moving forward on those things?
Yeah, I think that the big fear that a lot of conservatives had was that Donald Trump would be elected and he'd come right out of the gate being really progressive with an infrastructure plan and whatnot. And had he done that, I think he might have gotten a lot of support from the left. But now they've decided that they really do want to just move toward impeachment. And so all of this year has to be about how he's unfit and you can't work with him in any way, because if you work with him in any way, that means you're enabling him. So they might leave a bunch of stuff on the table. But on the DACA fix, I think that they have a bigger plan than just DACA. They actually just have a fundamentally different view about immigration and border control and border security and enforcement. And there was that leaked memo that came out showing that for them, lax immigration enforcement is a key part of their electoral plan. And so it might be that they just say they care about DACA when really they care about, in general, not having good border security or enforcement.
I mean, that does make it very difficult to listen to Chuck Schumer talk about the uselessness of a wall when we've never seen anything from them, anything to say that there should be any kind of rule of law at the border at all.
Actually, a few years ago, they all voted.
They voted for that. That's
a border fence, at least, which is not that much different from a border wall. So they are on record actually claiming to care about it, but they never funded it. And so it is time. I mean, I actually just wish we had a much better conversation about immigration in general. I'm a fan of immigration, but immigration, it's good for the country. I have a lot of family who are immigrants, and people who are part of an immigrant family, they know better than anybody that you want to have a coherent, sensible immigration policy. And a lot of what we're doing just doesn't make sense. And, there are rules about being a country and about sovereignty. And it would be nice if people just could talk and that we could all openly come together on a shared policy. I mean, this thing that they announced yesterday about how that temporary program for victims of the earthquake in El Salvador in 2001 was coming to an end. Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy that you let people live here for 18 years and then tell them that it's time to go because they have until next year to get out. At the same time, people should have been told at the outset if that wasn't a temporary program. And it's just so much deception to the American people. And I think people are kind of getting sick of it.
It seems that way to me. I want to ask you a little bit about the Golden Globes and Oprah, but before I get to that, you've used this word conversation a couple of times, and I sit and watch television and watch the news and find myself incredibly frustrated that there is no such thing as a conversation. Instead of having a conversation about the rule of law, for instance, versus being a welcoming country, we have a conversation where we say you're hateful if you don't want to have open borders. Instead of having discussions about anything, it basically is always posed as hatred versus the left's point of view. Is there any way? I mean, is there any way you see that changing? Is that something that we just have to live with as the press essentially? To me, the press has become part of the problem? I mean, I'm a First Amendment purist. I don't believe in any restrictions on the press whatsoever. But it does seem to me that the press has just become part of what makes this country so difficult to govern.
Well, I do think we have serious problems with the people who make up our press corps and how they're deciding to do things. I also think it's a problem with us as a people, though, which is there is a reason why in TV you don't have people agreeing but fighting, and that's because people like to see fighting, and they like to see you going for the jugular with each other. So we need to improve ourselves and demand higher things ourselves. It's not like this just happened in a vacuum and that they're forcing this on people. This is what people like to see. They like to see snark and sniping and yelling and not people coming to agreement.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I have to. I saw part of the Golden Globes, and I can barely tolerate watching the people who basically were silent for 30 years while Harvey Weinstein, preyed on people, coming out and having this kind of self-righteous attitude that now, by golly, we're speaking out now that we've gotten our Oscars and we've gotten our $1 million paychecks. It's now we're going to blame essentially Donald Trump and America. When you see this movement, I mean, is this something that is just passing through? Is this a witch hunt that's passing through, or is there actually something in the air that is changing in America's attitudes about this?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's funny that it started and everybody was it's not funny, but it's interesting that it started. Everybody was really excited about it. And then it turned out that because so many powerful people are liberals, I mean, it's not because liberals are worse by human nature. We all have the same human nature,
Sure.
But liberals dominate the media and Hollywood and all these exciting places where powerful people were coming down. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of backed off. And I think the Golden Globes was actually a great example of that. They were pretending that they were all concerned about it, and they all wore black, which was stunningly brave for the color that they wear all the time. But then they put Oprah Winfrey up, and she gives this speech as if she wasn't someone who was, totally involved in this the whole time. I mean, she was kissing him on the cheek and introducing him to his prey and all this, and it's so fake. I know that Hollywood is, by definition, a bunch of actors, but it's just hard to take them seriously in this milieu.
I wonder, too, I've just noticed this disconnect between the audience and the people producing the entertainment. I was talking about the fact that the NFL cannot understand why their ratings have gone down, and they keep saying, it's got to be something besides this gigantic nail that says we disrespect the flag in the center of our forehead. And I think that the movies are the same way. I mean, they're giving awards to movies that nobody sees. And people like us who like the movies, we may go see them and praise them, but nobody is going to see movies like Lady Bird or, Moonlight or any of those. Those are pictures that essentially are unwatched by the greater public, which used to be what the movies were about. I mean, it used to be that when you went to a big movie, everyone had seen it. Now it's only the people in LA and New York who watch these films at all that they win the awards. So they've kind of lost touch with us completely.
Right. And I think, they're seeing that in their revenues and that they are struggling to make the same type of money that they were. On the other hand, you have all this golden age of television stuff and people are, just technology changes and whatnot. But I used to be one of those people that was proud to watch award shows. I liked watching them. I had fun. I love fashion and I love seeing things it was fun. And you couldn't have paid me to watch the other night. And I'm not one of these, I don't like Hollywood people. I mean, I have friends who work there and I have always loved it, but I just don't feel like getting lectured to without enough reason to overcome the lecturing. And there was not enough reason to overcome.
It always reminds me of that last scene of The Madness of King George, where he says, smile and wave at the people. That's what we're here for. I think they should do the same. Mollie Hemingway, the senior editor at The Federalist, commentator on Fox News. You continue to do a great job, Mollie. I appreciate your coming by. I hope you just come by again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. It's frustrating. The committee it's funny I should say this. It's frustrating when I talk to Mollie or when I listen to her on the air. She's so commonsensical. You kind of think like, why can't everybody talk like that? I mean, even on the other side, it would be fine if she had more left-wing views and she would speak sensibly about, her excellent point about there being an irony of Donald Trump getting caught up in conspiracy theories. That's the kind of thing you never hear Trump supporters say, but it is a perfectly valid point and really interesting.